Greetings, everyone. This is Jason Tramm. I'm the Executive Director of the Light Opera of New Jersey, and I'm here with a very special guest today. This is Andrea DelGiudice, a fantastic director and with a real interesting vision for the production we have of La Boheme, which is coming up the last 2 weekends in March in New Jersey. So, Andrea, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's so great to be here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to describe this piece, because it's quite different than the traditional that everybody's used to. So
I keep saying this is not your grandmother's La Boheme.
that's the truth. That's the truth.
So, before we start, tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, we've gotten the blessing. I've been very blessed to work with you in many different times and in places and different productions. And I was so excited to bring you to the Light Opera of New Jersey because you have such a clear vision of what you want to do with opera and how opera changes based on this modern time. And you have such an interesting voice. Tell us about your journey.
Thank you. I'm an opera singer. I've had a very elusive career in Europe and in the States, and I've sung Puccini, Verdi roles, particularly the Verismo style of work, and played so many of these characters. And what sort of inspired me to start directing was you actually once saying, "What do you think?" And I thought, And in contemplation of why I would direct, coming from the stage myself, why I would direct, I thought, it's really important to tell the opera from the woman's perspective. And the reason for that is we have such a history in the writing of opera of the woman being a victim. And that's not enough, that the layers of the actual character, like where'd she come from? Who is she? And frankly, in my production of Traviata and Carmen, I really researched these women and went back and really learned their true story and why they're here, where their strengths lie. And that's how I really decided to put a big part of my life into directing. I'm a voice teacher, which is, my mainstay and my love of my life. But the directing is really, I think it's really relevant now. I think that it also, it can also speak for the underserved or issues that need to be talked about. And again, coming from the female perspective, there's a whole lot to talk about, I think, in terms
Absolutely.
of
And the idea of making opera modern, bringing a modern take to these great masterworks, what makes them so special, these universal stories that they're timeless, the music's timeless. But I think every time puts a little of themselves on these works. And I just love the idea of not being a museum piece that we dust off and just put out there, but recreating in a different way.
Well, I also think it's important to recognize that the themes of these operas were, whether they were classical or they're more what we're doing on the modern side, there are morals, there are stories that come from the person, that come from our lives and our interactions with each other. So, I don't touch the music. That's a God-given. I would never. I respect the composers. As a musician myself, I don't want to touch that. I don't do, how do you describe it? I don't do modern opera that makes no sense. Now, I know that that's a broad description, but there's a lot of it out there, and I'm not representational. I mean, anything that I do has to really come from the heart and the relationships between the characters. So, my La Boheme is really, as I thought about it, I lived through COVID, as everyone has lived through COVID, and I really saw and experienced with everyone else this dismissal of the homeless. Like, what happened during COVID? Everybody hid in their houses, right? We all had to stay, but where did they go, right? This whole mess of sending to a hotel, not to a hotel, throwing them out. Are they mentally ill? There were so many problems, and I live in New York City and I saw this. I also worked for the food pantries, and I was there with people who were online and needing food. And I was kind of, my feet were on the ground with it. And I've always had a deep wish to not only express what's needed for the homeless, but be part of what I can do in their lives, and have over the years had different experiences and volunteered for many organizations. So I decided that it could be very, very important to set La Boheme in New York City around Washington Square Park. That's basically where the whole opera occurs. The guy's apartment's right off the side of Washington Square Park. We have the park because that's going to be a big part of Act Two, which I'll get to. And the character of Mimi, I felt, let's tell her story through her life as a homeless woman. So what does that mean, right? Here's the thing. When we say a homeless woman, that can describe so many different levels or our idea of it, right? Homeless people can be 20-year-olds who are bouncing from people's couches, who sleep on the street a couple of times. I mean, homeless is not just what we think in terms of, unfortunately, that description, which was more derelict. It's not true, right? So I really felt that it could be very important. I've had a number of homeless people that became my friends that I saw through a certain point in their life, and then they got jobs. So they're human beings. And I think framing this around what I would say Boheme is sort of, a classical friends episode in a sense. It can be that, right? That's kind of what it's about. So I decided
Bros.
exactly. So and I will, like, the guys are updated. Colleen works at Starbucks, and they're going to have real jobs. Chonard comes out on his bike when he comes into the apartment. I mean, it works. It works, and I think it's relevant. So the opera, of course, the mission of Light Opera of New Jersey is to do the operas in English. This is another reason I think it needs to be done updated, because it is not a natural thing to do a verismo opera in English. It's tricky, but I think if you modernize the setting and the text, which is relevant to our time now, which is what I've done also with a composer that I work with, Jake Landau. We rewrote a lot of the text to make it make sense, but also bring it to sometimes a funny level, or bring it to what we can actually do on the stage. So I don't want to give spoilers, but basically, if you know that Washington Square Park is the setting, the first act, of course, takes place in the guy's apartment. And Mimi, we have a structure also on stage which represents her where she lives, which is more the cardboard house with the tarp on top. We'll have the opportunity to see inside in terms of how does she live her life. She makes collages out of what she finds. She's the true artist in this story, and I've always believed that was the truth. So we'll have a lot of different perspectives on that. I saw a movie called Bliss with Owen Wilson and Selma Hayek. The movie wasn't great, but I loved the setting. And Selma Hayek was a homeless woman, and it was in LA, so it was warm, but you could see how she designed her tent, and it was so beautiful and reflective of who she was. And so I want to tell the perspective from Mimi, not as a victim, but how is she finding joy or not in her life? Of course, Mimi dies of consumption, and consumption means nothing. Basically, it can mean whatever is current. So without me focusing on COVID or talking about it, I think that's probably what happened.
I think the similarities are amazing. The Murger, who wrote the source material for La Boheme, he was thinking of it from the 1830s, which was right after the fall of the French Revolution, and the fall of the aristocracy stopped supporting the artists, and there were artists now being sponsored by the bourgeoisie at the time. We see the same thing now with COVID. So many artists were in desperate straits, and I think there's so much similarity. And the fact that there was a respiratory illness that killed Mimi and that was present, it's amazing how art kind of cycles around.
I agree. And, I'm not a particularly political person. However, you will see in Act Two. In Act Two, we are in the setting of like a Christmas fair, right, around December. And this is how this is all happening. It's not Cafe Momus, but we have street vendors, and we have people selling crafts, and we have a Santa Claus. And again, the celebration of it is in Washington Square Park. And so the character of Musetta is a street performer. So this is so interesting because think about it. How many of those kinds of festivals have we walked into, and there'll be street performers? Musetta's a street performer. However, her guy, right, her Alcindoro, is a mafia guy, right? That also, I actually lived that life once. So that's another story. But again, it's relevant. And so I found a choreographer who is now my right-hand person. Her name is Valeria Cossu. She's from Italy. She's brilliant, and she's currently working on a number of Broadway shows as choreographer. And we talked about it, and I said, this is what I want. And she said, my strength is in body percussion. This is what she does. So I said, can we put it in Act Two? And she said, sure. And I mean, luckily I have Jason Tramm as the conductor. So you went, okay. So it will not interfere with the music, but there will be this segment where the show is body percussion. So the cast is going to experience it. We're going to, involve, think about like Stomp with garbage cans.
I love it.
Things like that. So that's going to be a very relevant part of what we see in New York City and what we experience when we go in. There's a chess table with the old guys playing chess in the park, while there's other things going on. So what I love about Act 2 to 3 is in Act 3, we see exactly the same park, desolate, cold, dark, garbage on the street because it's over, right? And who do we see in the park? The homeless people. Sure. So I want to really bring the truth amongst all that. I will not give spoilers about Act 4 because it doesn't end like people think. It doesn't actually, it just is not a traditional, it will make total sense, I promise, but it has, again, more relevance in terms of what really happens in people's lives. What really happens. So
what I love so much about being part of a production team like we're doing here is how each person with their artistic talent adds so much to the overall product, and in the end, it's like something that's like the combination of all of us, but even greater because we find these synergies. Tell us about some of the other members of the team that you're working with.
Yeah, well, you brought up a great point, which is if you don't have a team, you can't do it, right? So I have been working for the past 4 or 5 years doing updated or female-centered. My publicity agent calls it her story, right? Her story.
Capital H-E-R story.
Exactly. So again, that's what I've done. I discovered an incredibly talented young videographer, Jacob Maximilian Barron, through my work on an opera by composer Jake Landau that we all did together called Pietà, which was, we're going to debut that next year. And I've worked with Jacob now enough times that he reads my mind. So basically, if I say, here's what I'm feeling, this is what I'm seeing the character doing, this is the visual, he says, how about this? How about this? So he can pull out the visualizations that I'm looking for. I don't use the videography just to designate a location because let's face it, video is all of this imaging is so important now in productions. It costs less, right? Depending on how you do it, but it costs less. It's much more portable to be able to do the production other places. However, I started the use of it as a reflection of how the characters were feeling, right? Or what's the emotion that's evoked. So in the Boheme, we're going to have a combination of different things. And if you see the poster for La Boheme, you see a subway on the front. This is all going to be centered around a subway, which is the separation between the homeless and the other characters in the opera. So we'll see that. We'll see subway. We'll have some of this imaging used artistically throughout.
You said subway and a car horn beeped in the background. Totally New York City. I love it. We're going to have that the beautiful Boheme graphic. It's going to be at the beginning and the end of this video, so everyone can share in that.
Oh, great. So so along with Jacob, we have Alex Fletchko, who's somebody new to us, but a really talented lighting designer, and the combination of video and lighting is going to really be able to create this ambiance. And I'm a musician, I'm a singer, so I have to say we're so blessed to have Karen Delavan as our rehearsal pianist. She's very well known in the business, and she was at the auditions, and I think she'll also be an important part of the process. Valeria and I both want this to feel very much like a family so that we can ask more out of the actors. And we start in like a week and a half. I can't believe we're starting rehearsal.
Chorus is already underway. The ensemble has been rehearsing. We had 2 rehearsals and 2 more this weekend, and then we start our journey together.
Yes. So those chorus members better get their dance shoes on. That's all I gotta say.
I can't wait to. They're really excited about it. I tell them all about the basics, and they're really excited to jump in.
So I hope everybody can come see it. I'll just say one last thing, which is that when I directed La Traviata and my concept in Italy, I do them both in the States and in Italy. When I did it in Italy, I was praying because it's a modern version, right? So I thought, oh my God, are the Italians going to like it? And I remember at the end, my productions, it's kind of like a memento, the movie Memento, where you don't know which is the reality and which isn't. I'm using 2 violettas. It's a very specific concept. And at the end, I remember leaving the theater and I had teenagers running down the street going, "Hey, che forte!" Like they're like, "What really happened?" And I thought, wow, okay, I've stimulated some interest in these young people that they came back to see it every night.
Well, the Carmen we collaborated together was also that type of thing where people really, if the singing is great and the storytelling is compelling, it makes
Right.
for a different experience.
Thank you. The storytelling being compelling for me is about truth. It's about truth. It's about giving a voice to people who don't have a voice, to maybe outing some of the political figures in New York City who weren't so helpful in this situation. You might or might not see a protest. Just saying. So I really, I'm really actually I'm grateful, so grateful to Light Opera of New Jersey for giving me the opportunity to bring this again, a modern, different take. But I believe that no matter who you are in the audience, you will be touched in a very important way about what you're seeing and what you're feeling from what we create with this. And again, I feel like it's relevant, and I think that's why I direct.
Well,
Frank.
Andrea, thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait to get to work. Make sure you come and see it in the theater. You're not going to want to miss La Boheme with the Light Opera of New Jersey. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.